Democrats are hoping to revive President Biden's social spending and climate bill. The measure suffered a major blow over the weekend after West Virginia Senator Joe Manchin announced he would no longer support it. Senate Democrats need all 50 members behind the bill in order to advance it. CBS News senior White House and political correspondent Ed O'Keefe has the latest.
White House tonight refusing to give up on the president's top legislative priority.
We are going to continue to take steps, work like hell to get it done.
After key Democratic Senator Joe Manchin dashed any hopes for its passage on Sunday.
I cannot vote to continue with this piece of legislation. I just can't.
The decision stunned the White House. They called it a breach of his commitments to the president, but Manchin has always been concerned with the size and scope of the president's plan. Today, the senator blamed White House staff without offering details.
And they drove some things and they put some things out that were absolutely inexcusable.
Tax the rich!
And the far left for trying to pressure him.
Well, guess what? I'm from West Virginia. I'm not from where they're from, and they can just beat the living crap out of people and think they'll be submissive. Period.
Manchin's objections put much of the president's domestic agenda at risk. Nearly $2 trillion to fight climate change, expand child care, Medicare, and universal pre-K programs. And it would have renewed an expiring tax credit for more than 35 million families with children. Progressives quickly denounced Manchin, saying they'd warned he might do this.
I really am just completely disappointed and disgusted by his reasoning.
And today, they said Democratic leaders need to take the kid gloves off in future negotiations.
Of course, we have every right to be furious with Joe Manchin, but it's really up to leadership in the Democratic Party who, made the decision to get us to this juncture and how we're going to move forward.
Ed O'Keefe joins me now from the White House with more. Hi there, Ed. So has the president spoken with Senator Joe Manchin since he announced he will no longer support the Build Back Better legislation?
Turns out the president and the senator did, in fact, speak on Sunday night. Elaine, we're told it went well, but that's about all we know. And it's a signal that the president is still trying to talk to, as the White House press secretary described him today, his friend, about trying to find a way forward on this legislation and see if it can be salvaged and turned into something that can pass Congress next year. And to that point, Majority Leader Chuck Schumer says that there will be consideration of the Build Back Better plan in the Senate in January to compel Senator Manchin to express his opposition, not just on the airwaves as he has over the last few days, but also in public on the Senate floor.
So what might a revised bill, Ed, actually look like? Is it clear at this point? Has the president said what it is that he might be willing to cut in order to get this, essentially, this cornerstone piece of his agenda passed?
The president hasn't signaled specifically what he's willing to go and cut out of this thing. But moderate Democrats, a handful of them have. You look at a group called the New Democrat Coalition in the House, a bunch of centrist, mostly pro-business Democrats from swing districts across the country who said, look, one of the things we can do here is take out some of these 5 things listed here, 5 or 6 things, and focus on maybe 2 or 3 and spend that money over a longer period of time so that the price tag is still somewhere around $1.75 trillion, but not on, say, 7 or 8 things, just maybe 3 or 4. What would those be? If you put the salad together and you have to take out some things, if you're Joe Manchin, you want right now, at least, as based on his comments, to take out the child tax credit as written, because in his belief, it should include what they call in this town means testing or accountability, that the person receiving that tax credit is actually putting it towards raising children and not abusing it, and is still actually eligible for it given their income level. And maybe there'd have to be an adjustment to who exactly is eligible for it. And then extend it over 10 years instead of just a handful of years, which is what's currently proposed. He would take issue with some of the climate change provisions in there because he comes from a state that still relies on fossil fuels, arguing that it's going to hurt the economy in his state, therefore he can't be for it. Progressives turn around and say, we've already changed this thing in a way that actually would benefit your state. You just seem to have trouble explaining that to people back home. So we'd probably have a debate over that. Then you'd see what else they could possibly do. But here's the thing. Remember, whatever they do has to have the support of 50 U.S. senators who are Democrats, plus the vice president, and then has to go over to the House, where they can only afford to lose 3 Democratic votes. But you've had about a dozen say, if this thing is dramatically altered by Senator Manchin and moderates in the Senate, I'm going to have issues with it, and I may not be able to support it. And yet, most House Democrats know their butt's on the line in November if they're up for re-election and they voted for something that didn't ultimately become law. So they want to see a deal cut, which is probably part of what's going to compel them to keep talking, even though it could be an ugly and drawn-out process.
So taking a step back for a moment, President Biden has prided himself on being an effective negotiator. His relationship with Senator Manchin in particular stretches back many years. You talk about the fact that the two actually did speak by phone on Sunday night. But I wonder, Ed, what, if anything, does this sudden turn of events suggest about the president's ability to get legislation passed moving forward?
The White House would say it ain't over till it's over, and they don't see it as over. The issue isn't over. The debate over what to do isn't over. Maybe that piece of legislation is specifically written is fine. We'll come up with a new plan. It's a setback, and it's one that's going to fester over the holiday season and won't get resolved until some point in the new year. But certainly, if you're somebody who's been skeptical of the president's leadership this year, you might not think that passage of a massive rescue plan, a bipartisan infrastructure bill, and getting the Senate to confirm at least 40 new judges, a record in recent presidential history, is enough, and that he isn't able to cut this big deal that he has spent most of the year fighting for. So, you know, obviously an embarrassing setback, one that clearly infuriated the White House, despite the fact that today they tried to make it seem as if everything's copacetic and we'll figure it out. But it does raise questions about his ability to hold together warring factions of a party that cannot see eye to eye on some pretty significant things. They point out, and they're correct, that on about 85% of what's in this thing, there's agreement. The problem is, can it all be done in this massive piece of legislation the way it's written, or would it have to be done in different ways? And there's procedural issues. There is some substantive and ideological disagreement as well. But they'd say, look, on the merits, we all agree we got to do things about climate change, making child care and elder care affordable, figuring out a way to expand universal pre-K across the country, and, yeah, giving working parents with young kids a break through a tax credit.
All right, to be continued on that point, let's turn to the pandemic. President Biden is expected to deliver remarks Tuesday on the Omicron variant. Ed, what can we expect from his speech?
Well, the one thing many might be wondering is, will this include word of a new lockdown or shutdown policy for whatever aspect of American society? And the answer from the White House so far is no, it will not. The president earlier a few weeks ago laid out his winter plan to attack the pandemic and made clear that lockdowns wouldn't be part of it. That remains the case. What we are expecting to learn more about, as the White House press secretary hinted at today, is more about how the federal government is going to help states and cities, schools, deal with testing, making sure there's enough of them available to do it from home or to do it at public testing sites or do it in school to keep schools open. The CDC last week, remember, signaled they want to have school districts across the country set up a way to test students, and if they're negative and vaccinated, they can keep going to school even if they've been exposed to somebody who has it. That way you're not disrupting the family structure where the parents are trying to go back to work, can't necessarily afford to have the kids at home, don't want to have the kids at home because they should be in school. And if there's a testing system set up, the belief is that that should ride out through the rest of the school year and make schooling able to continue. They're going to implement it here in Washington next month. They've already announced plans to close school for the first 2 days of the year that were originally scheduled so that parents and teachers and others who work in schools can pick up their tests, start taking them, and start this process of testing and going to school. Beyond that, we'll see if there's any more conversation about things like testing to fly on airplanes. There have been lawmakers today pushing for that yet again. The White House signaled nothing new to announce on that just yet. But either way, building on what he had already said at a time when people weren't yet concerned about Omicron, reminding them that he had said that and making clear, apparently, that there won't be lockdowns involved in this new policy.
Ed, before we let you go, we want to end on a bit of good news. The President and First Lady have welcomed a new family member to the White House. Tell us more about that.
Commander, apparently, is his name, and being the second dog in the family is his new game. We're also told, if you're a cat fan, and you remember they said there would be a cat, there's going to be a cat. It's apparently coming in January. No word on what breed or what the name is, but there is a cat coming back to the White House. We've been doggedly pursuing the details all day, Elaine. Sorry. And that is news apparently some people find quite interesting.
Yes, including this correspondent, Ed, and if there's any openings there for a presidential pet reporter, I would gladly volunteer for that, Ed. Thank you so much.
Just don't tell my daughters who are still pushing for their dog that the president got yet another one. That's all I'd say.
Okay. Understood. Ed O'Keefe at the White House. Ed, thanks so much.